I am 35 years old and my backup strategy has sucked for my entire life. And I'm pretty sure your backup strategy sucks too, if you're even making backups. This spring, I took some time to get really organized and to make sure that all of my important data is backed up securely. In this video, I'm going to show you my entire backup strategy that I use for my personal life, my home lab, and my business. I call this project that I've been working on backing up my life. I'm almost finished with it, but the most important things are done, and this is what I have been doing. So why even do this? Why did I start this project, and why now? Well, this has been bugging me for a long time. Like I've done some pretty good backups with my databases in my home lab, but as I became more and more professional, I also started applying that to my personal life, of course. And at work, I'm always very careful with backing up data. And I realized that, yes, the most important stuff was backed up to like Google Drive and a bit to iCloud, and it was just living everywhere. And I didn't really know where anything was. So that had been bugging me for a long time. It wasn't organized, and I didn't have a clear idea of where I would look if shit would hit the fan and I would need to recover. So in July, I created my Linux workstation that I called Mimir. I'm daily driving Arch Linux, by the way. And in there is a single 2 terabyte NVMe drive. Now, it's not very likely that this is going to fail in the first couple of years, but it is possible. And if that drive fails, man, it would be a huge pain because honestly, yes, I did take a few sporadic backups, but nothing really consistent or with a clear strategy. So I could restore some things, but oh man, it would have been a real pain to have to rebuild everything from scratch. I can do it, but it has accumulated over the past 6 months. Like I have this really neat, well done system now, and it would be a pain to lose it. So that one has been bugging me most. If that drive fails, what would I do? And also, I am a minimalist, and I am always trying to reduce clutter in my life. Recently, my mom brought me a few boxes from my student days with books and notebooks in there. I had a few other notebooks in my closet here, and it was bothering me that these were, yes, they are living here in my home, but if a fire breaks out, I would lose everything. I've kept handwritten journals for years, and there's so much stuff in there that has high emotional value to me, which would be completely lost forever if a fire breaks out here. And that was hanging over me for a long time, and now I finally decided, you know what? I'm just going to do it. This is my number one priority right now. And so I did it, and here we are. So what am I actually backing up? Well, Mimir, my Linux workstation, I am going to be backing up the most important things from there. And of course, as a content creator, I produce quite a lot of video material. Now, up until quite recently, I never really bothered with backing up my video material, mostly because the things that I create are, well, let's face it, I make pretty simple content. I share my screen, I talk into the camera, but I'm not out there with like a crew and making lots of B-roll and that kind of thing. I'm not that kind of producer. So I always figured, well, my content is on YouTube and, well, great, then it's backed up there. Well, with everything that's happening in world politics, you don't know what's going to happen. And I actually am starting to become quite concerned of having all of my content on one platform. And if that platform somehow, maybe through an automation or a quirk in the system, decides that, oh, your channel is going to be deleted, everything's gone and I can't do anything. If I somehow get banned from YouTube, because you know I'm a real foul mouth and I'm always hating on people, right? So sarcastic, but there is a chance that maybe someday I would get banned somehow without me knowing, right? It's a huge risk. So I want to have all of my data, all of my my film material that I produce, I need to store that somewhere so that I could re-upload that to a new channel, to a different platform. I don't know. I put in a lot of hours in producing this content. It should be mine, and I should be able to upload that elsewhere if shit hits the fan. Also, I'm running a business now. I have my school community, and I have my client work, my freelance client work, and I do work for several clients, and it's starting to become increasingly complex to have all of this documentation and all of these repos, all of these projects for several clients then that I need to store somewhere and to have it organized neatly, and that I need to back up as well. So that was also a big reason. Now my Zettelkasten, that's of course arguably one of my most important assets ever. It's like the complete distillation of all of my knowledge over the past 3 years, 4 years now, and which also includes tons of my personal writing. About 3 years ago, I switched from handwritten journals to digital journaling. And basically, I documented my entire life over the last 3 years in that Zettelkasten. So losing that would be a huge, huge loss. So that is also something that I take good care of. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to reduce clutter in my life. I have lots of paper, lots of handwritten notebooks, important papers. All of that I want to have digital. And I want to get rid of a lot of my papers that I have lying around, these stacks of papers, and my notebooks. I won't get rid of them, but at least I can sleep soundly knowing that they are safely backed up. So that is what I'm backing up. Now let's dive into how I'm backing this up. So if you have done any backing up, or if you are somewhat familiar with this, then you have probably heard of the 3-2-1 principle. The 3-2-1 principle is like a golden standard of even enterprise level backups, where you keep 3 copies of your data. You store 2 of these copies on 2 different media types. So let's say I have my Linux workstation. Then my data is stored on the Linux workstation, and one, for example, a USB drive, for example. Those are 2 copies of the data. Now, the one here is keep 1 copy offsite for safety. So you would have your data, a copy of your data, and another copy that doesn't live on site, that lives offsite. This can be at your mother's house, your friend's house, or it can be in the cloud. And I'm going to be explaining to you how I've been doing this myself in my strategy. So keep 3 copies of your data, store on 2 different media types, and keep 1 offsite for safety. Now, this is, of course, for the most important data. In my case, not everything is going to be stored offsite in the cloud. I have a couple of extra strategies here. One of them being my film material. So I'll explain later, but my cloud storage is, of course, you have to pay for that, and I'm somewhat limited in that. But film material can easily be, at my current rate, it's about 2 to 5 terabytes a year that I'm producing. So that is something that I need to account for in my backup strategy, that I need to, in 10 years, I need to be able to have a solid backup strategy for 20 to 50 terabytes of data. And that's still a pretty modest requirement, I think, as a content creator. Like if you are a real content creator in terms of cinematography, people who have lots of B-roll and, then those have much higher requirements. My requirements are fairly simple in that case. So 3-2-1 principle, that's the principle that I've applied to all of my backups. And then there's organization. So I also took the time to really think about, okay, I'm going to make all of these backups, but I also need to be able to find them. I need to be able to quickly know where everything is. I want to have everything neatly documented, and I want to have everything neatly organized. So I came across the Johnny.Decimal system for that. I highly recommend this stuff. I already came across this in my note-taking journeys, but I never applied this to my note-taking because it was a bit too elaborate for that. I didn't need that level of organization in my notes. But it's a system to organize your life, and it's designed to help you find things quickly with more confidence and less stress. So it's a way of organizing your life and assigning unique identifiers to things. And that really resonated with me. I really like this approach, how he does it. So I highly recommend you go here and go to the workbook, and then he explains how to build your own system. He has a quick start of a pack of a completely done structure for you. And then he has a full workshop as well. And so if you get the workshop, you get the template, the workbook, and everything. And it's only $60. This man deserves a lot of support. So go there and buy it if you're interested, because it's a really well done workshop, and it's just really helpful. So check it out. Again, I don't know him, but I highly recommend it because it's great. So I use that to organize my system. And basically it comes down to that every backup that I have now has a unique identifier like this, 455101. And then in my note-taking system, I have everything documented, where everything lives, where the credentials are stored, how I've backed it up, what it contains, and what my strategy for it and what my thinking is. And everything that I'm backing up gets this kind of description. So if I need to find this particular backup, I can go to my Synology and just search for that ID, and then I have it. It's super, super handy. And it basically feels like you're building your little library, your own library. And it's been a really enjoying process of taking the time and organizing it properly. So I keep an index with descriptions. I do that for everything now, and this has been very useful for me. So let's dive into how I'm actually doing this and what I'm using for this. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how I should approach this. I already have a Synology disk station, a DSS 224 Plus. I already have this one. And it currently has two 4 terabyte drives. Now it's getting full, so I'm going to swap those out with 20 terabyte drives. And that is actually going to be enough for the next 4 years probably in terms of storage, which is great. So I'm using this as my main hub. Everything I decided that this is going to be my single point where everything lives. Because Synology has great software that I can use to create offsite backups, which I'm going to show. So this is my main hub. And then I'm also using Synology Drive. And this is great because it works on Linux, on Mac OS, everything. So all of my devices are linked up to the Synology Drive. And then all of my important things, my documents, my whole Johnny.Decimal system lives in the Synology Drive. And then whenever I make a change to it, it gets pushed to the Synology. And then when I open my MacBook, I will have the same changes. So the devices that are looking towards my Synology are Mimir, my Arch Linux desktop, which is where I do 95% of my work these days. Even content creation, I'm shooting this on my Linux workstation. Everything happens there. But I also have some tasks that sometimes I have to do on my MacBook, or when I'm traveling, or when I go to the office for my clients, then I bring my MacBook. And I want to make sure that all of my data that I have available on my Linux machine, the important stuff, is automatically available to my MacBook as well. I don't want to be bothering with having to sync that manually. So I'm using Synology Drive for that. Then my iPhone is also able to connect to it. And I was on the train the other day and just trying to test it out. And this is why I like the Synology so much, because it's just such good software that they have. I was just on the train and I figured, what if I needed to get this important document that I had before? What if I needed to get that right now? Well, all I did was like open my phone, quick connect to the Synology. I was in there, I could browse my drive, and I had my PDF available in like 5 seconds. It was super, super easy. And this gives me a lot of calm, knowing that if I'm, for example, hiking in the mountains in Norway and a client calls me, he says, "Oh, dude, I can't find this document. Can you please check it?" If I'm hiking in the mountains, well, I just walk to the top. If I have a bit of signal, I just go to my Synology. Because I have everything nicely indexed, I know exactly where to look, and boom, I can send it. And that's how I can come across very professionally. And I really like that the idea approach to it, that I can also use my iPhone for this. And I can also eventually use this as my photo storage. Well, I don't take a lot of pictures, but iCloud Photos is great, but I also want to have a separate copy that I own, and I'm planning to use Synology Photos for that. And finally, there is my home lab. So my Kubernetes home lab has several nodes, and all of these nodes are using the Synology iSCSI driver to provision persistent volume claims on the Synology directly. So all of my persistent data in my Kubernetes clusters is actually being provisioned on the Synology and using that as storage. In addition, I also have an NFS share that I can use across devices or pods in Kubernetes to push and pull data that I need to share between them. And the great thing about the Synology is that it has, well, like I said, it has great software. So it's super easy to work with. You just set it up and you put in the drives and it works. And yeah, I'm really impressed with Synology. I've been using it for about a year now, and I never got too deep into it. I just needed to play a place for my persistent volume claims at the time. But now I've been using it more extensively, and I must say I'm really impressed. Not sponsored by Synology at all, just recommending them. But if you're watching this Synology, get in touch with me because I would love to collaborate. It has great software. It's super easy to work with. Like I said, the Synology drive is great because I just open up my drive and I get into my system and everything is available there. But also I can use the hyper backup feature, which is great because this is where the 3-2-1 principle comes in, right? I have my data on my Linux workstation. I'm backing that up to my Synology, but I also need to push that to an offsite location. And this is where hyper backup comes in. So my main system where everything lives, I call that system 0 because everything originates from emptiness, from 0. That's my name of my system. And I configured this to every day take a backup to an offsite location. I did a lot of research, and again, I'm not sponsored, but I went with iDrive E2, which is basically S3 object storage for a very decent price. I'm paying $125 for the first year for 5 terabytes. And after the first year, it's going to be $250 per year. So $250 for 5 terabytes is great. I like iDrive because I can easily manage my buckets from a web interface, but it also has backends for Synology, but also Restic, which is the next thing I'm going to show you. And it's working really well, has a good price, so that's the provider I went with. And what I also like is that I can configure a replication between the buckets across different regions that I have if I want to be completely secure. So this is my offsite location for my most important data. However, my film material is going to be a lot more than 5 terabytes eventually. So what I'm planning to do with my film material is I'm going to store it on the Synology. So that's my first copy. And then the second copy is going to live on a separate HDD drive. So you have these HDD drives by Western Digital, like these kinds of things. So this is just a hard drive. It's basically a huge USB stick. It's a 16 terabyte USB stick. And my plan is to then have my data, my film material on the Synology. And then occasionally I will take my HDD drive, copy that data over, and then store it at my mom's house, for example, or with my brother. So then I have the 2 copies, one on my Synology, one here. And the thing for this data, like it's not life-threatening information, this film material. It needs to be safe, but if I lose it, it's not like I'm gonna die. And therefore, I'm not going to go with the full 3-2-1 here, having the 3 copies. I think this is enough for my use case. And also the thing is that technically I do have 3 copies because everything also already lives in YouTube. So that is my strategy for that. So with that, I have my 3-2-1 setup properly done. And then that's how I do it. So I'm using the Synology to back things up to the cloud. Now, how do I get things on the Synology? Well, there is the Synology drive that I'm using for my iPhone and my MacBook and my Arch Linux workstation in terms of this sort of system 0 that I use for all of my files and all of my important data. But my actual system backup is done through a tool called Restic. And I have fallen completely in love with this tool. This is one of these tools where you think, how is this even free? Because it works so well. It took a bit of mental switches for me to get into the concept of a Restic repository and how that actually works. But basically what I do is I'm using Restic to make daily backups from my home folder and a few other different configurations that are being backed up to my Synology and to my iDrive offsite cloud storage. So then I have 3 copies of the data, one of them being offsite, and that is how I do it. And I'm using systemd timers and custom scripts in order to make these backups with Restic. And if you're interested in learning more about this, then you should jump into my DevOps community. You can find it at school.com/KubeCraft. In here, I will provide all of the scripts, all of the configurations of my systemd timers, and what I'm exactly backing up from my Arch Linux system. So if you're inspired by this video to also back up your systems properly, you can just jump into the community and copy paste what I have done, and you don't have to figure it out for yourself. All the templates are going to be in the community. In addition, you're going to be joining a community of DevOps professionals that are going to help you set up your home lab, and you can ask any question you like. We will help you land your first DevOps job. And also there's over 40 hours of courses. There's the KubeCraft internship, and you get access to an enterprise Azure environment if you want to learn Kubernetes as well. So this is definitely the place to be if you're interested in getting a tech career or lifting your career to the next level. So I'm pretty confident that my backup setup doesn't suck anymore. I sleep really well knowing that when my drive fails, I can easily restore it from the internet, from my offsite location, and I have a strategy for the future that I can use for my film material and everything. So I sleep much better now that I've done it. So I highly recommend that you do the same. Take the time to get your backups set up properly, because it's also going to teach you a good mindset for your work as well. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.